in the beginning for
Yeah,
the
no worries.
complication. Yeah.
I'm pretty unassigned for the rest of it. If it goes long, it goes long.
Yes, you're back in Bali. I guess it's your favorite place, right?
Definitely one of them. There's much of the global map that I've not unlocked yet, so I don't know yet. But of the places I've been, it's a special place for sure.
Yeah, a lot of new things right there, right? So it's like what could you say? Not sentimental, but a lot of old love to it. I have a similar place. I went to the province next to Skåne, the province I live in, up to Blekinge and studied, and it was like kind of. I think it's the best time in my life when I went there.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a cool
Yeah,
little adventure the first time I went, and I knew as soon as I left, or even before I was leaving, that I would be back. But it's just a very conducive environment to like the city life that I'm in right now. Obviously, it's like low cost of living, but the quality of life that you get comparative to pretty much everywhere else in the world, with that cost of living is very high. And as far as just lifestyle as well, like it's, a tropical climate, a lot of sunshine, a lot of grounding. So, and I'm sure we can get into stuff like that, but it's conducive to vital living as well as the actual creation and online business stuff as well.
yeah. So I'm wondering, do Indonesia have the same currency as Thailand? But because I've been to Thailand, and at the time, 1 Swedish krona was equivalent to 4 baht, so it was very cheap to live
Yeah,
there, you know.
it's different. So they use the Indonesian rupiah, and because Bali's an island of Indonesia, Indonesia being the actual nation itself. And so they use the IDR, Indonesian rupiah, and the conversion for US dollar is like $1. I don't know the exact. I could pull it up right now. I think it's like 10,000. So yeah, so you can so you're ordering
That's
a
silly.
coffee
Yeah.
for 30 or 40,000, um, stuff like that. Like I bought a book today from the bookstore for 230,000, which by the isn't a book because it's hard to get books here, but still like 230,000 for I don't know what that converts to, $15, $25.
Yeah, you can go tell a kid in the US and that I bought a book for
Exactly, yeah.
200K. Yeah, but it's also interesting. I've been thinking about that recently, being in the tropical climate, just generally warmth, as we've discussed in the Vitruvian community, in the body, how it's really conducive just to, it can be therapeutic, at least it seems to be for us and probably many people, because your body doesn't have to, I don't know, uh, produce as much ATP or anything like that to get the energy and the warmth. It's just so relaxing and soft to be in a warmer climate,
Yeah,
and
and
you
I've thought
feel
about
better
this a
by it.
lot because I've thought, am I just being selfish with like my current state and ignoring kind of my like genetic phenotype, if you will? Because I mean, you can see like red beard, blue eyes, like descendants of Atlantis, if you will. But at least the history that we've been told, that would put me somewhere on the map in like the Germanic. Like my family is Germanic by heritage, which would mean I'm in generally cold climates like most of the year. So to some degree, it's just like, oh, am I kind of ignoring maybe I'm more suited for those environments, but then anytime anecdotally I've put myself in places that are cold, like I just don't handle it well. And we can go into the recent discovery I've had around kind of the function of the thyroid and myself having kind of like an impaired metabolism to some degree, like subclinical hypothyroid. But like you're saying, I think that a warm climate is conducive to all metabolisms. And I saw something interesting on Twitter that pointed out at some point, way back when ish, if we understand or agree with the kind of narrative on like origin of man, origin of society, origin of species, everybody would have started at the very beginning from an equatorial climate. Like we all would have been in a warm, wet environment regardless, and then would have proliferated to these places all over the world. And certain people who decided to stay in more cold and mountainous regions would be better adapted long term. They grew more body hair, more body fat, different metabolic adaptations. But I still think regardless, there is, I mean, the writing's on the wall, and I think that a lot of health that in my personal life, I'm trying to be less data driven, study driven, like so and so says X, Y, and Z is important,
Mm.
and just listening to actually like what my body is telling me. And there is absolutely nothing, there's no indicator that living in a warm climate is in any degree bad for me. If anything, it is extremely vitalizing. So that is the active decision I'm making. And hopefully, God willing, I'll be able to spend, most of my life kind of in either tropical or equatorial climates. And then for those times where I do make my way north or south, um, you know, still warm and getting a good amount of sunlight and ground exposure, etc. So
Yeah,
not a cold weather man myself.
that's interesting. I feel the same. I really want to live in a hot environment too, because I feel the same. It's probably good for me as well. I think that. And testing things for yourself, I've come to the conclusion that's also really important. Reading all these studies, this, that, and fear just builds up. I've been really, what you say, neurotic with health, and the more and more I let go, I just feel better, bro. Like the zero thing, I'm just not thinking about it anymore, and just think, yeah, mom is cooking this with love. It's no worries.
Yeah,
I'm focusing on other stuff, and the thyroid thing is also interesting. I when I didn't became a Peter, but I read his works also like 2 years ago in my early health journey, and I love to see all these Twitter folks digging into it deep. Like there's one called
yep,
Veronica Celestial Being, and it's what's it called, Lawrence,
yep.
Nate Lawrence you've spoken to, and all these other folks. I really love what they're doing because it's very counterintuitive. Like eating sugar is good for you. What? How can that be? And warmth, and yeah, there's just so much around it. And I also think I have some shot of hypothyroidism because of the, I don't know, environmental toxins, the plastics, or uh, what is it, chloride. It's also a halogen like iodine, which could compete to hormones. I'm not saying it does, but could be. Uh, I asked a teacher recently, I was doing a course just now, if it's possible that these halogens, I don't know if you read chemistry, it's the similar group to iodine, chloride, what are the others? Fluoride, of course, in the toothpaste. He says, like, if they were able to like compete with iodine in the thyroid hormone synthesis, we would be in great danger because would be in such great amounts. But I think there's more nuance to it because we have them like fluoride toothpaste in tap
Yeah,
water, probably.
it's interesting. I think
So I think
that,
it's best like
I mean, there's probably
think.
some validity to that kind of argument. The one cool thing that I always return to when I do get kind of doom pilled or concerned about, environmental stressors, or for instance, in my scenario, like the damage I've already done to the system in previous times where I didn't know better, or, just like being environmentally raised in a super soy upbringing, not using sunscreen, not eating real eggs, not drinking real milk, not grounding, like covering my skin when I went outside, not being exposed to sunlight a lot. And then, of course, formal education keeps you in a blue light box 8 hours a day, all these kind of things. And then, like, I went through all of the different uh, health experiments where, there was a while where I was doing the traditional kind of like bodybuilding thing where you eat like no fat and you're just doing broccoli and chicken and rice and stuff. And obviously that has like nothing beyond the macronutrient value. I've done like restrictive diets, so all of those things were partially environmentally imposed, partially self-imposed, but that's taking damage to the system. However, the kind of thing I return to often is that like the human animal, above all else, is crazy resilient. Like it's actually remarkable how much damage it can sustain over its lifetime and just kind of keep pumping, because like if you look at the normie person, like the average of anyone, especially the average American, you know, the damage that they're doing unconsciously, like some people are still out here smoking filtered cigarettes every single day and drinking soda and eating whatever comes off the shelf in a bright pink package, like no thought at all, and they'll do that for 50 or 60 or 70 years. Like they're not even losing lifespan, which is crazy. Of course their quality of life might be affected, but the fact that they're still pumping is insane. Like it's insane that the body can kind of like take hard damage, direct damage to the metabolism, to the system overall, and still keep going. So that's what's cool about the other end of the spectrum, is when you start to unlock or recover or remember some of these more, I guess, obvious health improvements or like augmenters, then you get to like supersede your previous levels, and you get to unlock kind of beyond just health, like true levels of vitality, which I went into talking to like Case Bradford on my podcast, kind of like the difference between health and vitality, because I think health is like, okay, you're not sick and you're surviving, but then vitality is like waking up with abundant energy, never having lulls of energy. And as like the Pete crowd talks about, it's just like you kind of create the internal furnace, and once you have a flow of energy, everything else downstream of that takes care of itself. I'm interested in what that kind of feels like. Soon I'm awaiting currently a delivery in a couple days. I'm gonna try taking thyroid for the first time. Just gonna run the experiment and see how I feel. Just doing NDT.
Awesome.
Nothing particularly special, but excited to see like what the effect will be. And I'm gonna be monitoring my kind of core body temperature as my predominant metric for improvements or not. Plus, obviously, how I feel. But yeah, I'm curious to see what that'll feel like, and to see what it will potentially feel like to have like a truly like motoring metabolism, and like not have super, I don't know, like for me I've always been super not resistant, but I just can't handle the cold. Like I get freezing cold so easily. Like if I'm in an air conditioned room for a long time, like I'll start shivering, my hands will get really, really cold, my feet will get really, really cold. And for the longest time I thought that was just like a circulation issue, or a an issue because I used to be kind of like a chubbier kid, and then when I got leaner as an adult, that was just like a byproduct. But obviously it's not how the body's supposed to work. Like it's supposed to handle itself and adapt to your own changes over time. So anyway, I'll hop off the box because I'm sure there's questions you have.
Interesting. Yeah, a lot of roads to join there, I guess, to talk about right there. So I guess I'm just let me know how that works with NDT. That sounds interesting. I myself never went on to some thyroid medication. I mean, the closest thing is just keep myself warm. And you spoke about soda. Counterintuitive, but health in a way, or vitality. I've started integrating some Cokes in my diet because I feel I keep the
Is that
warmth and
cane,
the sugar.
are they cane sugar
I feel like
in
it really
Sweden?
helps me. And it's also, it's, I think it's identical to cane sugar. It's just that cane sugar, as compared to sugar beets we have here in the north, it's just that cane sugar harvests more
Oh, it's
sugar.
sucrose. Okay.
It's the white sucrose. It's like table sugar, It's not the corn syrup. I think the corn syrups is not as good because it has fructose or something. It can fatten your liver more heavily, I guess. However, it's like, I think it's cool how, I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep tonight. I will handle it. It's like you were speaking of how resilient the body is, and doing such things like intentionally and just knowing, I know my system can handle it. That's also, I think, a path to vitality, unless your things aren't like maxed out, like perfect, everything is filtered, everything is on point. That could be a good start,
and I think
one that's working for me where I am right now.
To take kind of total control if you're in like a health, Nate went into that. He's like, I had debilitating health and gut issues, so you have no option but to go to like, say, a very restrictive diet to like kind of restore your health, or pull every lever you can. But in the case of, say, you and me, where we're just trying to like experiment, pull different levers, like kind of chase that vitality thing, there's really something kind of unwritten in the adding stress to the system intentionally, like positive stress, like going on a long hike with no food super early in the morning with your friends. Like the benefit that you get from that challenge will outweigh the undue stress of like, I didn't sleep because we had to get up at 4 a.m. to summit, or whatever the additional kind of non-optimized context that comes around that. And especially as a young man, like we not only are human, but like the male vehicle is crazy resilient. Like we can just sustain a ton of damage and keep going, especially as a young man. So I think at least for me, like my thesis is like, I want to drive the machine hard during this season because like there's going to be a period of time when I'm older, I just won't be able to do that kind of stuff. You know, I won't be able to say yes on a whim to go randomly train jujitsu and then go sprint on the beach and then the next day go take a 20-mile hike. Like I can just say yes and I'll probably survive. Like I theoretically could go run a marathon tomorrow. Like I wouldn't thrive. I'm not going to PR or anything, but I wouldn't die. I could go bike 100 miles. I would be sore, but you know, give me a week and I'm back in the game. And so that's crazy. Like that ability right now is like a finite window. You know, I might get a decade and a half, 2 decades of that, but you know, you start breaking into 50, 60, 70. I don't think that that's a consistent thing for recovery, and maybe that's a limiting belief. But yeah, I think adding that intentionally fun and challenging stresses is like compelling to me.
Exactly, the fun part, like having the human, like the spontaneous experience, trying things. How do I handle this? Can I handle this better than I think? And all that. And that also reminds me of how, as I perhaps mentioned to you when I started the course, how I was drinking heavily before, you know, with my teenager friends and all that, and how I'm just probably doing fine now. Perhaps the brain has been having done some damage over there, but I'm still going strong, and I have a relative who has smoked for 40 years. Yes, he has had some
And
diseases, but you know, he's still
same thing for
81.
me. I
like,
mean, I think, I mean, you and I have spoken about it before, but like when I was in university, I definitely had my short bout of drinking. And when I look back on it, like this version of me is like astounded, like the stuff I survived and the stuff I was willing to do on a consistent basis. And I wasn't even the worst among my friend group. And we were all still doing it. You know, we would go out and play college sports on the weekends, like as a competitive student athlete, and just be fine and then go back into it and just kind of loop that on repeat with poor sleep, poor nutrition. But yeah, when you're young and you're having fun, there's life to be lived. And I think that as someone who meditates on death a fair amount, and you know, like it's the sign out of my podcast, I have it tattooed on me. Like I don't see myself, even though I am a very much like I want to like be vital and I want to take care of my health and I want to feel good, all these things. I don't see myself like looking back at whatever 85, 90, God willing 100 on my deathbed and then being like, you know, I shouldn't have eaten that extra dessert with like on that at the nice restaurant, or I shouldn't have, you know, split a bottle of wine with the girl in France. Like that kind of thing. I think over optimizing. It's about knowing contextually what serves you and what doesn't. And I honestly think the psychological component is probably the biggest. And that's the hardest part about the path that you and I are on, where like once you learn everything, you can't unsee stuff. You can't unlearn it. So it's like you want to be able to just eat like mom's cooking because you love her and she loves you, but you're like, I know this was cooked in canola oil and I know what that does to me. So there has to be like a little bit of a suspension of disbelief, and you can't allow yourself to like do the psychological damage where you're thinking, oh, this is going to set me back, and then now you're thinking about it, and like of course your brain, in my opinion, is like kind of manifesting all of that stuff in your physical body. So you almost like create more damage by thinking about it. And I would argue that you literally do that, but I don't have any studies to back that up.
No, neither do I, but I think it's no doubt that thoughts have tremendous power. I saw a post a long while ago from Carnivore Aurelius on Instagram. He was showing an experiment. Some two dudes were holding like hands in a way. The guy was trying to like pull the hands up, and he was thinking like bad stuff, like I hate you and I'm bad, life sucks. He like couldn't pull them up, you know. And then he was doing the opposite, thinking positive thoughts. Whip, went way easier. It's like hard to prove such things, right? How do we prove them? What neurotransmitter gets elicited, what hormones levels they are, and whatever. The psychological part is so huge, and as you were on, it's probably the biggest one, because yeah, I experienced that just thinking about that too much.
Exactly.
It's
I mean,
not
I
nice,
think
you
at a
know, it's
baseline
not the way to
thesis, and
do health
even like
or
traditional
vitality for that matter.
allopathic physicians would agree, stress is the fundamental cause and root of all disease. What kind of creates that stress now becomes kind of the nuanced conversation, whether it's emotional trauma. I'm starting to think a lot about the emotional components of my health and like what
Interesting.
amount of damage has unresolved like subconscious trauma and stuff played into the way it's manifested in my body, because that stuff is really interesting to me. And I think that the level of stress that I feel, like say you have a really, really hard conversation and the emotions that come up and are elicited, you know, you're crying, you're thinking deeply about whatever it may be. To me, it's like emotions are energy in motion. Our body is a physical manifestation of energetic frequency. Like we are at a very, very fundamental level, just energy. So if you have like trapped and stored emotions that are like traumatic to some degree, of course it's going to manifest in some sort of like, I don't know, like maybe it's irritable skin, or maybe it's you're holding on to undue body fat around your waist because your body's trapped in fight or flight. So that can be a source as well. But then there's like the psychological, like ideation. You know, when you're eating the cookie, are you thinking about, wow, this is like amazing? Like you're just enjoying the sweetness and like the experience? Are you thinking like, oh, wow, that was like 420 calories. That means I have to do, you know, for like 2.5 hours of workout just to be able to burn that back. This is already on top of my full day's calories. That, like, if you're just playing this game, I think it creates that crazy neurotic loop. And at least in my personal experience, like I definitely, you know, you kind of cross this bridge where you learn a bunch and you're measuring everything. And to me, that sent me down a path of like an eating disorder with like binging and restricting and stuff, because it was like very psychologically hard. So unfortunately, like I feel like that winter and that kind of dark place with food, to just return to the place where I'm essentially now actually respecting my body and its inner wisdom, and just like trying to listen to like, all right, what am I hungry? I'll eat. If I'm not hungry, I won't force myself to eat, which is a big thing in the bodybuilding community with like the cut bulk cycle. Like you're literally, when you're hungry, you're cutting, you're not allowed to eat more. So you're denying your signals there. And then if you're already full, you have to force feed yourself to like hit your goal and like grow. Like that's so counterintuitive. Your body, you're literally training your mind to reject the conversation it's having with the body. And to me, that can only end up in eating disorders. And I think the proof is in the like the writings on the wall with a lot of like the fitness community, the people that are in maybe more of the bodybuilding side. I obviously color it with my personal experience, but I honestly don't know anyone who really went down the route of like super tracking their food and super kind of getting neurotic about that consumption that hasn't manifested in what I would describe as disordered eating. Now, it might not be clinically orthorexia or eating or anorexia or whatever the like litany of options are. I don't even know that what I had would be clinically considered an eating disorder, although I would probably say yes. But either way, it was an unhealthy relationship with food. Like it was a problem. And I'm still in the process of like learning my way out of it, like unlearning, I guess, and also learning to kind of like love my body and its wisdom and its knowledge, and like trust that as like the highest source rather than something somebody else said or whatever I wrote down on this plan that this app is telling me I need to eat this amount. Like no fucking app with like basic algorithms and calculations can tell me how my body is processing calories. Like it's just not a, because day to day that fluctuates. You know, was it a warmer day? Was it a colder day? Did I sleep perfectly last night? Did I not sleep perfectly last night? Was I thinking more about work? Like the amount of calories your brain is burning, and that's not even to get into the whole, you know, the metaphysics and the emotions you're bringing into it. So I know I'm kind of wandering a bit, but I just, all this to say, I think that it's unfortunate because you want to, as a creator especially, and you know you're more in the health space than I am with your content specifically, you want to be able to offer prescriptions and advice and help people. But the truth at the end of the day is like there is no, you literally, like, you want the best answer, listen to your body and experiment with it, see what works for you. But that doesn't sell well because it's one Twitter post and then you never post again. So there has to be a little bit of a more of a conversation. And I understand that, but yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I also resonate with all that, all the things like surrounding CICO, calories in, calories out, like the metaphysical, the hormones, the sleeps. I mean, it has a prestige, the calories in, calories out. It's like what you call it, the second law of thermodynamics. It's energy. I don't know. Energy doesn't go away; it just changes form. For like really focused, like weight or fat loss, I think it's good. Tried it just a few weeks ago, and I did saw some like small uh, change actually just by thinking about it. And just okay, I'm gonna hold on a little bit. You know, I have my baseline, which I also want to talk about how you can be on your baseline and like do all these things like drinking a Coke, doing that, not doing that, and sleeping a little less. It's about finding your baseline, I think, and sticking to it, like not religiously, but by being respectful to yourself, getting the sleep, eating, training, having the social interactions. Also, want to circle back to the emotional part. The holistic psychologist, I know you recommended her to me, and I'm tremendously grateful. There are all these relationship styles, which are very good to know, you know. And I've been seeing some tweets on the feelings you can get, you know, from relationships. One thing that has helped is like really just feeling something through. I don't know if you've tried it, but like just when you get a feeling, don't just judge it, just feel it through. I think that has helped me a few times. And yeah, the emotional part is of Peter Attia, the longevity guy. He wasn't interested in that at all, the emotional part. But he really like seemed to heal, get in a better human shape, you know, when he integrated that, because it's not just one thing. We need to dive deep into each of the what is called
Yeah,
details, and then
I think that's a
go
great. I'm
back to
glad that
look
you
what do we have
ended on
here.
that
We
point
need to
because
take
that's kind of where I
everything
was
into
gonna
account.
touch in on, like kind of where you started, which is that there is a temptation definitely amongst like professionals when you've niched down or specialized or whatever to really hammer on like your thing. You know, you can always find somebody that's preaching the gospel. I mean, even the Peters are an example, right? They're going to say like metabolism and thyroid, like that is the end all be all. It'll take care of everything else. And then like Peter Attia for a long time, it was like, okay, you just need to do these specific protocols, especially like with VO2 max, and like that is going to be your number one determiner of health and longevity. The vegans have their thing, the carnivores have their thing, and like there's infinite of all of these little like kind of religious dogmas. But with like even the calories in, calories out thing, like it's great, and I wouldn't deny the Newton's theory, like theoretical law of physics. The problem is it's not accounting for all of the things in the entire system. We can't actually isolate the calorie consumption and burning as just whatever. First of all, estimating what you burn is kind of an insane prospect now that I look back on it. But second of all, the consumption, because the way you're metabolizing certain calories, like not only based on the
Hmm.
ingredients, but based on the composition of your digestive system at the time, as well as how much sunlight you got. Like that has an energetic effect. There's literally energy in that. So that is into this like thermodynamic like balance equation of in versus out. So yeah, I would agree in versus out is 100% the total answer, but you have no way to know all of the variables on both sides of that equal sign going in and out. Like, how does grounding affect all of that? Like, that's energy. That's an energy transfer of ions. How much sunlight is blue light? And then, of course, I would also say that emotional energy is energy in and of itself. So if you're consuming or in an environment that is extremely emotionally negative, that's going to impair your in versus out equation. It's going to decrease your metabolism. It's going to decrease deeper level functioning of all kinds, your gut, all of these different things. It might even like lower your heart rate. It might, there's all kinds of different stuff versus the other thing where it's like, say you're laughing all day, like talk about raising your like TDEE, like you're going to have so much more
Hmm.
kind of a vital engine going on inside of yourself if you're just like living a vital and happy and fun life, surrounded by love. Like that's an ingredient that could never be accounted for by the like evidence-based community. So yeah, I think it's important to see a kind of a total image, and I love to see these characters that have been like very militant for a long time, or maybe not militant, but like definitely very confident in their school for a long, long time. but they're willing to revise their philosophy when new information comes. Like Peter Attia was somebody who I actually found a long time ago, really liked him. And then I found additional stuff to the conversation that kind of put me off, because eventually he was like he just felt very like cold and medical to me. Like there wasn't kind of a greater conversation about emotions, God, kind of larger context to some of these other areas that I would respect as the holistic human equation. But like you said, he's kind of come around, and it shows an openness of mind for somebody. I mean, he's built an entire career on all of this stuff, this bedrock, and it's not even abandoning it, but he's willing to be vulnerable and say like, yeah, well, this stuff changed for me, so there actually has to be something here. Like that's really cool. So I have a lot of respect for him. And we even see it in characters like on the business side, like you've consumed Hormozy's stuff, I've consumed Hormozy's stuff. He, across his, 2 or 3 years really kind of coming up in popularity, started out as like a much more angry troll, and he's now a lot more of just a nice guy. Like he was very like, legacy is bullshit, you're all gonna die, nothing matters, like just go make a bunch of money and do whatever. Like, and he still has some of that kind of tendency. Part of that's going to be his temperament, but you can tell. I mean, like the way he talks about writing his books, the way he talks about changing people's lives. Like, this is we can put this on the record now for whenever you release this. But I think Mr. Hormozy is going to have a kid, because he was like very anti-kids. He's like, it doesn't matter, like we're going to die. I'm focused on the business. That's the legacy I want to leave. But like, I think he's softening with age, and I think that there is like something more spiritual and a lot deeper that is within him. It's why he spends so much time and attention writing the books. Like, what even is a book if everything is purely material? And he kind of has this nihilistic philosophy. Like, there really is no incentive other than just make more money for yourself. Books, as he says, are not a great way of making money. So why dedicate so much time? I think something in him is calling, like, I'm here for a bigger purpose. That is to help a bunch of people. Books are an amazing way to do that. And so we could literally see his like philosophy evolving and him softening as well. So it's cool to watch those figures in the public eye be humble enough to like kind of share their evolution. And it's interesting because I think that the end route of all of like intellectualism and academia, it has to come like full circle, and it ends up being like spirituality ultimately, in my opinion.
Yeah, the hero's journey. And you also touched on the verse and your origins, which I want to get into, like how you got into all of this, all
Oh,
the artist side, the philosopher
TDEE.
side,
So
and the warrior
it's
side. And
total
also mentioned
daily
an
energy
abbreviation, I think,
expenditure,
TDE. I'm curious,
I
what's
think is the
TDE?
abbreviation. Don't, yeah, don't quote me on that, but it's like just it's something up there with like, you would
It
calculate it's
rings
like a
a
BMR
small little bell
plus
in the back of my head.
motion plus other
TDE.
things.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so while we're at this point, I guess if you want, you can get into like how you came into the artist side and the warrior side. You spoke of Attia, and the artist is like Hormozy, I think, and the philosopher is like you touched on the verse. Like Hormozy is writing books, it's like essentially about the verse and legacy too. I mean, the Stoics are also big on that. How your legacy doesn't matter. Be good now, because when you're dead, you will be remembered for like 2 decades. Like the kings back in Rome, they didn't remember the kings like 3 generations ago. It's just like do good stuff while you're alive, but also leaving a legacy is actually important, because if it's in books or if it's in lectures, it's important to help the future generations continue. And that's also a thing I extrapolated or just got from the what do you call the 80,000 hours community. If you're heard about them, it's like making an impact and realizing how many people will live in the future and how many has lived in the past, and how we both owe
Yeah,
the
I love
past and
that.
the future to
And
do
I can go
something great and
into
not
the warrior,
take this for
philosopher,
granted where we
artists,
are.
like those
So
archetypes,
yeah,
if you
if we
want.
could
But
go
I
into
definitely
that.
first want to kind of
Sure.
address what you were talking about there, which is like the legacy thing. And it's interesting. I think that the Stoics, even though they kind of couch it in, it's not going to matter. Don't aim for legacy. Just be good now because you're going to be forgotten. And like that's what Hormozy would also kind of hammer on, or used to really kind of emphasize as well. I think the interesting thing is that the best way to create a legacy is to be as present as possible in the moment, because that's the maximum of which you can ever show up. So if you're always just showing up to be the best that you can right now, and you just stack kind of as many of those days as God gives you, then that's how you create the max of your legacy. So weirdly enough, like they're saying, like ignore legacy, but by actualizing that path, you create the best legacy of which you're capable, versus like if you're focused on legacy, it can be this weird thing like, oh, is this going to end up creating this like arbitrary result in the future that I have no control over? And then you're putting your attention in a place that literally doesn't exist yet, the future. So in a weird way, they're all trying to kind of get at the same thing. And that's what I would say for me, is that like when you consume a lot of breadth of material, like different schools of philosophy, different Eastern, Western religious traditions, different spiritual practices, and then you combine it with your kind of anecdotal experience, to me, it's all kind of, it points to what you feel. And that's, I'm coming to emphasize intuition and your internal felt experience so much more, where I would kind of like ask somebody who's like maybe very like stoic minded of like the actual school of philosophy, not just like the personality trait, and say to them, like, do you feel like legacy is important? Like based on your actions, like, do you do things that are for a future result? Like, would it feel bad to you personally to just be forgotten? Like when you meditate on that idea. And I think everyone would feel pretty bad about like being completely flatly insignificant and just like feeling like it's a blip. So I think part of that honestly is like a larger psyop with, making people feel insignificant. I think it's kind of the same thing with like, create the stuff about space being this like kind of vast, infinite expanse, and there's like billions and billions of universes, and we're just this like tiny little dot, and you're a tiny little ant on the dot, and you're like a blip in history, and like nothing ever existed, and you're super finite and insignificant. I think that it's like this larger conversation to disconnect your people from their own divinity and their power for like reality creation. And I know I'm kind of wandering here a little bit, but I'll try to kind of consolidate it. But yeah, I think with all this stuff, interestingly enough, if you just return to like how it feels instead of just like continuing, because for me, it's like I've explored it. It's like, does legacy matter? Does legacy not? It was very interesting to me because it struck me. I'd never heard, the first time I heard like legacy is bullshit, like somebody say that actual sentence, was Mosey. And I was like, damn, he really just said that with like full conviction. And I respect him a lot as a thinker because he's clearly like gone through all of the text. He's actually like very intelligent. He's read all of the great thinkers, and he's wrestled with these big existential ideas and formed his own philosophy. I disagree with some of his philosophy, but that's fine. I respect the fact that he's actually walked through, the valley of the shadow of death, I guess. Like he's wrestled with the idea of like, why the hell am I alive? What is this all for? Like, what is going on? Is there God? Is there not? And he's talked about that loosely. If God willing, if I get the chance to have him on the podcast, like that's what I really want to go into, is like his philosophy, because I think that's very foundational to his success beyond that. If not intrinsically, I think so too, dude. I think it'd be so fun. But anyway, that hit me really hard, and it hit me not only in his conviction, but also in his like, in the fact that it made me feel some type of way. I felt like, no, that can't be right. Like it feels wrong. It feels like if I'm here and nothing matters, like what I do here doesn't matter at all, something feels wrong about that. And maybe that's me being like an emotional, sappy person. Fine. Like I'll take the naive card, but I honestly look like, when you look at the quality of life that people live, the people that assume that everything happens for a reason, I can have an impact while I'm here, my life matters, my life actually has a reason, I was born for a reason, I don't know necessarily what exactly it is, but I believe that it has a reason, I believe that there's a plan. People who have some version of that belief set, those people live better lives. We can call them optimists if we want to put them in a giant bucket, and there's actual data on that as well. Like optimists live longer, they have a higher quality of life, versus if you just choose to view the world pessimistically, or as a lot of those group of people might say, realistically. People love to be like, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, whatever the hell real means. But yeah, I don't know. Another thing I return to as well is like, you will know them by their fruits. It's like a verse in the Bible. And I think it extends to really everything. Anytime somebody is like being very prescriptive or pushing some sort of philosophy, even in health, And it's a little reductionist, but I think it's fair. Like, what is the fruit in your life? If you're going to sell me some sort of diet plan or training plan, what is the fruit in your life? Like, are you healthy? Do you make other people healthy? If you're trying to sell me a school of philosophy, like you're telling me legacy doesn't matter, are you living a life that seems joyful? Like, do I want to live like you? Does that belief set seem to make you happy day to day? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't personally trade my day to day with Mr. Hermosi. I love that he's found his thing, but it seems to me that the philosophy is not creating the fruit that I want. So for me, it's like I will choose something different, or kind of create a version of my own alternatively. But that's why I like thinking about these ideas and trying to not get very attached to certain tools, even Stoicism, which obviously I've shared in the program and is very popular right now. And we share a ton of wisdom in the community about that all the time. I think the amazing thing about the Stoics is like they were the king of like one-liners. Like their quotes are amazing, and they're very digestible. Like the meditations by the boy Marcus, like it's just a lot of like extremely pithy quotes that like are very practical and helpful. So I think I love it for that reason. But I think as a larger philosophy, I think it lacks a little bit of like the romance that I not only like to see out of life, but I think that when you look around you, life is romantic. It's extremely ecstatic. Like look at a fruit. It's brightly colored. It's sweet. You get to experience like the depth of the flavor. Like God created candy that grows on trees for you. That's amazing. The sun feels so good on your skin. The ocean cools you off when you're in the sun. Like just walking around, like you're in a first world country right now. I was born and raised in a first world country. And even in this third world country that I'm in right now, I get to turn a lever and have a hot shower bathe me every single day. Like that is that's a miracle. We live better than kings did for thousands of years. So I don't know. I look around and I see all this magic, and I want to build an accompanying philosophy that is equivalently exciting.
Yeah. Interesting, Zach. The thing about people changing, I think that's really important. And I just now connected those two dots together with like, if something like struck you very hard, like the one thing with legacy is bullshit, it means they kind of have to change or like investigate further. And then they change, and then they show that they've changed. That's like a really good trait example for a friend to have, like someone close, you can change. They have an open mind, which is like really important, and that really struck me just now, how legacy is bullshit can be a psyop in a way. Like you need to leave, not leave, but if you want to, you go ahead, leave something behind you. It's the world will be happy and you will be happy at the same time. It's like the best of both worlds. And you also touched on like the logic and feeling things. Like Stoicism is very rational and logical, and I went way deep into that. You probably know this story if I told you, like in the first calls we had during the weeks, I was heavy on that. Just until recently, when I dropped that morning habit of reading the Daily Stoic, and in extension, it became that I dropped the gratitude practice in the morning. I just became more true to my nature and thinking for myself. Not, I know they have their what do you say, prestige, like reading one page a day, the Daily Stoic, but it got too much. I was doing it for like 2 years, so that cycle is over. And as you said, they have their prestige, like really just emphasizing the beauty of nature, the simple things. And as you said, being present builds you up for the best opportunities. Oprah Winfrey also says that. I have a plugin on my browser with quotes instead of the main feed on social media. It's like awesome, you get all these good quotes. So yeah, I mean, there's so much nuance in a way, and some like to think that it's black and white. That I don't think there is much things that are black and white. Some there are, but there's always so much to know about something, and you still don't get the whole picture. And like the more I dig into a topic, like on nicotine right now, there's contradicting information, and there's information that complements
I love
and
it, and I think
like
that
erases from
it's
other piece of
what a privilege
information I
we
read
get to
somewhere
like kind
else.
of explore these ideas
It's
and
just a
kind of
ride,
find the
man.
answer that works
It's
for
the
us,
journey.
because it would I don't know, like I almost feel like this reality wouldn't really exist if it was just like so black and white. I even think about, the a big discussion topic of discussion with God is like the problem of divine hiddenness. It's like, if God exists, why would he make it so hard to experience him? Like, why isn't it obvious? Why doesn't he just tell us, like walk down on earth and be like, yo, I'm right here? But I would almost say like it defeats the point. Like, if you had irrefutable evidence of God, then there's no like exploration, there's no journey to developing your faith, to develop felt understanding or experience of God. And same thing with like a philosophy. Like, if it was so painfully obvious that one thing was right and one thing was wrong, then there would be no journey to it. And I think that true philosophy is embodied and it's built through your experience. It can be reinforced through reading like the great minds of history, and we have unprecedented access to like all of history's knowledge through the internet, which is amazing. And I'm grateful to be in this time. But like the most impactful philosophy that I've ever experienced, I've developed through my own lived experience and like embodied experience, and only then come around to either align it with like, oh, actually that's kind of what Aristotle was getting at, or see how this aligns with what Nietzsche was saying, or whatever. And to me, like, that those are just like little winks. It's like a smile where it's like, oh, clearly like that was somebody who wrestled with these ideas and found the same conclusion. That's awesome. Like that shows kind of a through line of like the human experience, or like what could be truth with a capital T. So yeah, I love like the nuance thing. It's obviously why I have a podcast, and I wish there were more people that had the capacity of mind to like hold the ideas in their head and like actually kind of wrestle with them and play with them and like experience a little bit of the nuance of it all, right? Because I think it is definitely taxing. Like, it takes a lot of attention to be like, okay, this whole thing exists, this whole other idea exists, they are exactly opposite, but they're trying to exactly, yeah, they're trying to describe the same thing. I don't know which one is right. And I think we have a lot of inbuilt tendencies to want to cling on to like what's right. Like, so much of our human animal is like
Always.
tribal by nature. We want to have our school of thought and our people and be like, okay, we're right, you're wrong. But I think if you can resist that innate, I don't know, tendency or temperament, or the word's escaping me, but if you can resist that, the urge to want to cling on to ideas religiously, it's fun to be able to discuss them with people that are also capable of the same, and find your little herd of people that enjoy the more kind of theoretical and philosophizing. Because personally, I can't help myself from doing it. I've been doing it since I was like a little kid. I just did it in my head and didn't have anyone to talk to about, so I would just read books and watch videos on YouTube. But now that I'm creating content, I can kind of naturally start to attract people into my world. Obviously, you're a product of that. We have my actual community, but now you're on your own creator journey. Like, I'm on your podcast, which is like a crazy cool full circle moment, and we get to have this kind of conversation as peers, solely by a product of me initially, creating and sharing my thoughts, naturally attracting us through the power of the internet. And likewise, if you hadn't entered the arena as well, made an account, started following people that you were interested in, I could have never found like the tether to find you as well. So it's really cool, and I'm grateful for all, for sure. I don't know kind of where that thread was going. Apologize to just keep dropping the end of a sentence on you.
Yeah, truly amazing. No worries. I love it this way, and I don't know if you like can notice it, but you've also some of the things I've has points like your past, like the artist thing you've just mentioned, and as a byproduct of all your interesting threads you've started, initiated here, and I love it. It's a good way, I think. And I want to circle back to the irrational optimism, as it could
Yeah,
also be
it's
called. Whenever I have
I
that
did a podcast a
mindset,
long time ago
the
about
day
like mental
just goes
reframing,
so
and
much better. It's
I'm
like
about to do
it's so
like a
it,
33-day daily
day
YouTube
is clear,
challenge. So
clear
I
as day. I
filmed a
mean,
video the other day. It was either
so
yesterday or today. Well, it wasn't today. It was yesterday. Um, about the same kind of concept. Like, and I probably should go into it more, but or recreate another podcast at length. But like, the ability to choose how you perceive things is potentially the most important superpower that we have access to. And it goes back to the optimism thing that we talked about already on this podcast. Like simply just by choosing to assume a positive uh, tint, like the way I like to think about it is putting on lenses. Like you get to choose every day, you get to choose the lenses that you put on to like view the world. And you could choose to have like really gray and fingerprinty and blurry and cloud your vision. And then the world that you see, if you keep those glasses on long enough, that actually becomes your world. And you're like, why is everything blurry? Why is everything gray? Everyone's ugly. I can't see anything. It's so shitty outside. And then whether it's a book or a piece of art or someone else comes up to you and takes the glasses off and they're like, dude, you seeing what I'm seeing? And they give you like rose tinted lenses that are clear and they're bright and they're colorful and they're vivid. And the crazy part is we get to choose that every single day, that we get to choose how we look at situations. It is not simple. It is sometimes very difficult, but the developing that muscle, like strengthening the muscle to reframe your experiences, like when you feel some sort of way about a circumstance or you're tempted to fall into a negative thinking pattern because something didn't go the way that you maybe expected. How is this happening for me? What is this experience trying to teach me? What is the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? Why would I have chosen this to happen? Like all of these different questions are like kind of tools you can throw in your tool bag to help you view things much more positively. And by literally just choosing to think about them differently, the texture of your actual experience changes. And in my opinion, your actual reality changes. And the crazy part about like starting to show more gratitude and starting to be more optimistic about how things might go is that things actually start going more optimistically. Like things literally start changing. People are nicer to you. Your business starts doing better. Your content starts doing better. And it goes down to the fundamentals of like energetics and stuff, like attracts like, everything vibrates on a certain frequency. So when you raise your internal state and your frequency, you're naturally going to attract a better reality. But on a kind of a practical, pragmatic level, I think it starts with the words we use and the way we try to frame our experiences. So not allowing yourself to get down or talk badly about a circumstance or kind of like beat yourself up or say like, man, I'm such a fuck up, or today didn't go well, or so it's a shitty day outside. Like people say all kinds of crazy stuff in passing, and like most of them are unconscious of it, but they have no idea the spells they're casting over their own reality. And it's, to me, it's sad. And I lived a long time like that, like before I was kind of privy to this school of thought or this concept. And I sometimes think about like what would be different in my life had I known this earlier, had I been raised in a household that was more cognizant about the language we were using. I guess I was fortunate that I was raised in like Christian education. So by nature of just the Bible itself, it's like a pretty feel good book mostly. It's like mostly pretty nice words. So a lot of the context of my education, I guess, was like pretty positive, but it wasn't like as conscious, I would say. And definitely like my parents, even to this day, obviously still struggle personally in their own life, to be, I don't know, they're just on lower levels of conscientiousness with the way that they handle their life. And it's not they're living their life, no judgment at all. I've worked through a lot of that, but it's a powerful tool, and it's awesome to see. I remember that was a big thing that you and I went through, and I could see that kind of transformation in your life, and like I feel like you took to it and like ran with it, and I can see like even in the messages you send in the community, that's something that you're so good about and so like positive about reframing, and like it is. I feel like it's made your life amazing. Like I don't know your personal life, but like you seem so happy, and it's been like a long time since we've connected at least at this length, like on a call, and it's awesome to see your growth like as a young man through all of this stuff. And like think about how amazing it is to like have that tool set at, I don't know how old you were when we started working together, like 2019, like you're, yeah. So like unlocking that at 20, you get like, who knows when you'll have kids, say 30, you get a decade of practice of like making your life amazing and abundant. And then you get to give that superpower to your kids factory installed, like right when they get born. So I don't know. I think about that all the time. Like the fact that we're both so young and are already thinking about this kind of stuff and are privy to this information. Like the world is our oyster. If God chooses to keep us around, then it's going to be a really positive impact.
Yeah, it's for the better. Anyway, any path or past like took its place, your bringing with the not so conscious thinking, and I always get into that notion. A little bit more philosophy would do a lot of people well, I think, because as you said, I wasn't very philosophical before this journey with the health. It started on many fronts, and since then, the Stoics have helped me in that, as you were talking about the perception thing. I think that's one of their emeralds, perception. What you think, it will stain your soul, and perception is everything. What you see is what it is to you. That's your reality, bro. You can't change your reality with perception. It's so big. And I also have thought about that sometime, how I'm actually grateful for that, having been brought into this. It will automatically stop. I think it did that last time. Yeah. Just one.
Oh, I see.
I'm not. I think I was recording like unintentionally for like several days,
Yeah,
so I had to
I'm good to keep going if you want to.
because I bought like for $200. Yeah, but that's interesting, Zach. You've touched on your past actually in a nice way, like as a side, and I mean, I see a lot of podcasts do that, like, what's your past? How did you get into this? Because that's like interesting. That's the way to connect the dots, as you posted once. You can't connect the dots looking forward. Your subconscious sticks things to it for a good reason. So it stuck that to my subconscious. You connect the dots looking backwards. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big one. I obviously stole that quote from Steve Jobs, who's somebody who's like very inspirational and kind of foundational to my ethic and the way I look at the world, like as a reality creator. I remember it's like singed in my mind, not only his Stanford commencement speech, which I recommend anyone watch, like it's a 15-minute YouTube video that I think would definitely change anyone's life, but there's even a shorter one where it's talking about putting a dent in the universe. And he's basically saying, like, once you realize that the world around you is made up by people no smarter than you and that you can change it, you can go out there and make a dent. I remember seeing that from such a young age, and it's just like a very empowering message. And it's true. Like the further along this road I go, as I meet more and more quote unquote successful people, and like I'm sure it's true as the ladder goes up, like people are so unbelievably average, it's insane. And instead of taking that like as a black pill and being like, wow, like the world, all the successful people kind of are average or kind of suck or very unimpressive. It's like, well, think about if you stay the course, how amazing you can be and how amazing of change you can impact on the world. Like that's a thing that keeps me in the game for sure, is like God, I feel like just gave me too many gifts to not really try to make a big splash, like really big impact. And, I have to hold myself accountable to doing my end of the bargain, but I have just been given way too many tools. And when I continue to meet people that have massive platforms or a bunch of followers on social media or whatever, and they're just like pretty normal people or sometimes even unexceptional, like maybe even bad people, I just, to me, that's a green light. And it's like, okay, the world is really yours for the taking. And you can have a super positive impact. And we need more really, really good people, in my opinion, to be winning and like from the top, leading with vulnerability, authenticity, and not trying to harm people, but trying to do good and empower more people to do the same. So yeah, I think about the subconscious and like kind of writing in retrospect a lot. And again, it's about avoiding the temptation or the tendency to get dragged into the past or dragged into the future. But it's about being here, because we can try to make, a lot of people are like, what's your 5-year plan? Like, oh, are you going to go to university? Or you're not going to go to university? What are you going to do with this? What are you not going to do with this? Like, what's the career path? Like all of these things, they're just trying to put you in boxes so that they can understand you better or relate to you and their world. But the crazy part is even the people in the traditional path, they have no idea where they're going to be in 5 years. They might think they do because they're on a certain degree path or a certain career that's okay, 3 promotions from now I should be here. But you have no idea if someone's going to come into your life and make you move to another country. You don't know if you're going to get in a life-changing accident. You don't know if you're going to meet the love of your life and travel all the way across the world. The future is literally impossible to predict. And so in my opinion, it's like very arrogant, honestly, of people to come in and say like, yeah, like what's your plan for the future? And then be so certain that they have this like really concrete grasp on the future and then try to project that onto you. To me, it just gives me a ton of freedom to be like, the future is totally unknown, complete mystery, and it's an absolute ride. So I'm just gonna completely let go and ride the ride. Like all I can do is how do I show up today? How can I show up today? Like what excites me the most? What's the highest good that I can offer the world today? Um, how can I stay in the game one more day? And when things are really, really hard and you get trapped in that circle of doubt, oh my God, is it going to work out? Oh my God, when is it going to work out? All you have to ask yourself is like, could I do it one more day? Could I stay in this thing one more time? Could I wake up tomorrow and just not be done? Can I not quit? And the answer is always yes. You always have like one more swing. And then that's life. Life is literally just a collection of one more swings, even if people like to convince themselves that it's not.
Yeah, that opens up a gigantic conversation, which I really want to talk about. For starters, that reminds me of how when seeking understanding, like from when you're with your parents or with other people at work, how you can see older people as wrinkly kids, give you more understanding, and how everyone is trying to understand themselves, do their best, as you were saying, people trying to understand you when you're trying to understand yourself, keep working on yourself. It's like, I think it's good intention to ask like, what's your plan? Because I don't know if it's just they have a plan and they want to see if someone else has, or they care about you. But I definitely see what you mean. And personally, I've actually, what do you say, searched into university in Gothenburg, a big city in my country in Sweden, to actually study health. It's called the Health Promotion Program, with specialization in diet and physical activity. So it will both be interesting to see if I even get in, if I can move there. What they will teach, they will probably push their propaganda and their agenda. I mean, but I gotta be open, that will be a battle of itself if it turns out that way. Like, why do I believe what I believe? What do I have to back it up? Personal experiments, and I don't know. It will be simply interesting, and I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, that's all you can do is like explore and do things that excite you. So like go to that, if that degree really, really excites you in that context, like go do it. And if you enjoy it, stay in it. If you don't enjoy it, leave it. Like don't feel any pressure to be locked in or not locked in, because you're on this esoteric health world. Like would it be wrong to go study in traditional health? Absolutely not. Like you have to, a
No.
good thinker is willing, capable to listen to conflicting viewpoints and take the wisdom from their side. And then also, I would say, if the system at large is ever going to get better or change, we need people entering the field voluntarily and saying like, I'm going to change it from within. Like this is what the book is teaching me. Well, who's going to write the next book? It has to be somebody that's bringing new experiences to it. So I'll study under this school, get the certification, so that at large people respect my voice in the space. I'll evolve my philosophy and throw in all the, anecdotal stuff that I also find valuable. And once you become a respected individual within the community, then that's how you can have impact. Because I think about that a lot, like a lot of the systemic change that needs to happen through the education system, health, even politics, which I don't consume much of, but a lot of our institutions are broken, and part of me is tempted to just completely disconnect entirely and just give up. Like I would argue that my day to day maybe is more emblematic of that, but I also am an optimist at heart. And so I think that if there is ever going to be change in a positive direction, it's going to take people like yourself, like any of us who want things to be better, to actually go and make them better by entering the arena, whatever their specific arena is, and actually kind of giving a stab at it and trying to change the conversation, shift the direction. And what's awesome is we have kind of this like insane powerful lever of social media. So you can do them both in parallel, and growing a massive following, sharing your information, disseminating it for free online can do a lot more than you can do in isolation, just publishing, little research papers in university. And that will give you more power at your university, because if you become the kid that has, a massive following on social media, then maybe you'll get invited for panels to speak at events, to talk to professors. Like it'll open doors that you can't imagine, and you'll start to kind of merge these two worlds. And I think that that's going to be the future of institutions. It'll be a lot more decentralized, but there will always be probably a preference for and a respect for traditional accreditation. There's just a huge percentage of the population that won't trust somebody unless they have a MD or a PhD or whatever. So be it. Go get one, and then enter the arena. Like if that's something that you're called to.
Yeah, interesting take. Thought like some similarities in my own thoughts about it. I know like Annie Galfin and Attia Huberman, probably a lot of other ones. They have huge success in this social media world because they have went there. Before it was like this, like how, the esoteric versus the traditional, the study thing. But yeah, that's an interesting battle I'm probably willing to take, bringing those two worlds together. And as you say, detaching from, not sticking to or adhering to one thing, bring it all together. Because we can sit, I can sit here on Twitter and write all this stuff, but it's not until you get out in the real world, really chat and converse with other people and tell them how you see it, and they tell them how they see it, and try to come to a meeting, a connection in the middle, and work from there. That's real strength, I think, to be vulnerable like that. To say I don't think the same way here, and that stuff, like that journey.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting, man, and it'll be fun to follow your adventure and see kind of where you choose to take things personally. But definitely, hold yourself accountable and don't discount the impact that you are having by writing on Twitter. Like because you can only do so much. You're not going to snap your fingers and have a PhD overnight. So doing other things in parallel and building the impact along the way, like even a niche following, a couple hundred followers or a couple thousand followers, those are human beings. Those are people that are being impacted by work. And if you slowly start to build that momentum and that, that infinite kind of return, first of all, it's better to start sooner rather than later. But secondarily, like that in and of itself is its own certification. Like there's a ton of power, prestige, access, and impact that comes from simply just posting on social media. Because funny enough, like the Hubermans, the Attias, some of these other like clinically and classically certified characters, even Lex Friedman, they're having social media influencers on their podcast to discuss the ideas, who have no accreditation and no formal education, but they've made a massive impact through their platform. So hold them both as high regards. I think that that's the direction we're going, right? Like a lot of people distrust the institutions themselves. So think of social media as almost an institution where you can get a certification where it's like, hey, I may not have a PhD, but 1 million people are interested in what I have to say. Like that's a pretty powerful concept. It's cool to combine both, right? Because like Huberman definitely has a lot of strength because of his accreditation, and he does world-class research at a world-class research institution. So you kind of can't have one without the other for him. But then Carnivore Aurelius, like a massive platform, he's just some dude who won't even post his face online. He's changing people's lives, Solbra for the longest time, same thing. He's literally just a dude. And, barring, I wouldn't take medical advice from either of them, but, learning from them is totally valid. There's truth that they're spreading as well. And they're actually in the arena, embodying their philosophy, living vitally. They have evidence to say that their life seems to be pretty good. Their health seems to be pretty good. So why not take little ingredients here and there and run the experiment personally? And I think that you can do the same even if you choose to enter a more traditional field or arena as well. Like it's not one or the other,
I see what you mean. Yeah, that's interesting. Plucking like gold from different places, as long as it's like good, or if it's even the truth or it fits with you, that's really good. And that's a good skill to have, not to, as we're really touching on a lot, to be adhering to something one simple one thing. in particular. And that also brings me to mind something I've been doing. I really like those posts where I like seek some quote parallels. I see one quote and I see a similar one having the same meaning, and I do like these parallels.
cool.
I've done at least one post, but I can do I sometimes recognize them just in my day to day, and those are like, I guess you could argue, some universal truths, and that also indicates that people have had the same problems for all of history, basically, just in different manifestations, not the devices, but perhaps newspapers back in the day, or the mailman, or whatever. You
Yeah,
get the point.
I agree. And I like to think about that too. You know, when you think about like meditations, for instance, you know, it's allegedly a 2,000-year-old book, but, you know, a lot of practical wisdom on how to handle people day to day. You can see that the same type of issues were coming around. So that's why, I don't know, and I don't want to open this whole conversation at, you know, the hour and a half mark or whatever, but I often think the same thing where it's like the problems have always been the same. The context has just changed. So with things like, people are very concerned, like, is social media having a negative impact, or is AI going to be a problem? I think all of these same issues exist and always have and always will. The context is just changing. Um, we're the same problems that are going to happen in the AI age, or are the same ones that happened in an internet age. They all boil down to the fundamentally human issues. And if you can master things like philosophy, like psychology, like focus on the human element, then the context around it becomes pretty much effortless,
Hmm.
in my opinion, or at least a lot simpler, because the complicated part is you and I and how we think about the ideas. Um, and ultimately, like, most of our problems in life have to be solved through interacting with other people. So that's definitely, in my opinion, a better thing to optimize for. And it gives me a lot of solace when there's like unknown, for like instance the AI thing. I don't really want to open up that whole conversation right now. That can be another podcast in and of itself. But um, stuff like that. It's like, we have no idea what the future is going to bring. Is it going to be a problem? Is it going to be whatever? Like, you could get really doom pilled about it, and maybe those people will be right. But I choose to be like optimistic and say, you know, the context is definitely going to change a lot. It's going to look different than it does now, but a lot of the fundamentals are going to stay the same. You know, the the sun's always still going to feel good on my skin. People are still going to need to talk to each other. Red meat's going to still be red meat, God willing. Like, I don't know. We're kind of wandering at this point. I feel like I'm losing I'm losing it.
Lose some focus, perhaps. Yeah, but I see what you mean. Just like the internet thing came before my time, the AI will also came. And one thing I think about that is just how, like, the computers took our monotonous work, like the work we didn't want to do. That's not in the human nature. So will AI. It will like do the heavy work, and we can do the human work, like being talking to each other, as you say, and other things that require the human elements. So
Yeah,
yeah, we touched on a lot of things, bro. I think we'll be going
covered
for
a lot. It was a
1
lot
hour
of fun.
20.
It'll definitely be interesting to see how you kind of thing up and edit it. But it's exciting that you're podcasting. I didn't know that you had started this up, so I'm honored that you reached out in some of your early episodes to have me on, and grateful to be a part of it. So obviously keep me apprised of how things move forward, and I'll, you know, share it with all of my audience when you put it out. And excited to see you grow and evolve. I mean, even just between the last time, you know, you and I worked together and now, your English is so good. Like, it was already very impressive. I'm always impressed by people who can speak more than one language, because I only have one. Um, but it's gotten way better, and I think you really have a strong future in this medium. Actually, like, especially with the health stuff. I keep this
Thank
up
you.
for sure, even if it is like a purely selfish pursuit. You just have the conversations, you know, post it. You like, it's a slow game. You know, you're not, like, you can't really grow a podcast overnight. And I would think about it less like you want an outcome, and more you're just using it as a cool context to talk to really smart people. Like, for somebody else who's so curious, just use it to reach out to like health professionals and social media people that you're really interested in talking to, but have no other reason. Be like, hey, I have a podcast, I'd love to talk to you. And if you just start banking all that as episodes, you'll build yourself up, you'll learn a ton, and the people that slowly start to add up over time that are following along, they'll get a ton of value from it. And then one day you'll have this kind of like body of work that you'll be able to look at that you can be proud of. So excited for you, brother man.
Yeah, thanks a ton. It was just like one day I thought, why do I not have a pod? And I think the morning after I just started did all these things, and I talked about something about myself, and then I thought, why not invite people? So I thought I'm in this Vitruvian community, which is one of the best things I've had in my life, I think, which I'm really grateful for your building. So I thought I've had Chris James and Tunagen, the Turkish guy, and now you. And I guess I'm thinking of
Yeah, a lot of legends
Logan
there on the
Rieger soon.
list. So that's awesome and cool that it's all come very full circle. Grateful for you joining the community. Grateful for where we've started. It still, even for me, feels like early days, just the beginning of something really, really special. So yeah, it's awesome to share the arena, bro. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, I saw you had one thing you do in the pods, like I don't know if it's you or the Thyroid experience, but like sharing one thing to the people in the arena or something. And I thought I could have a similar thing, like one concise thing people could think or do that you want to
Well, there
bring
will
to the
be.
listeners,
It's
if
just
there
a
are
matter
any.
of when they'll find this. So whether you're coming to this live, recently uploaded, or years later, one thing I would leave is trust yourself, like trust your intuition, don't take life too seriously, and have as much fun as possible, and everything will work out better than you can imagine.
What an ending, bro. Thanks a ton, Zach, for coming on. I'll drop
Jacob,
your handles in the description. Yeah, thank you. Have a good one. Bye. Yeah.